Nobody ever wants to say these 3 words, but you know what? I'll swallow my pride and I'll do it. I was wrong. Oh, yeah. It's Locked On HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I, of course, am Darian Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor. I appreciate you. And contributing writer at USA Today's Saints Wire. How could I forget? But I appreciate you for going on this journey with me. Make it Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day every single day. And remember, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey is over. It just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Starts with an S, ends with an S. Today's episode ends off with a little bit of media deal discussions because the CIAA and HBCU GO have agreed to a 10-year partnership. Prior to that, the HBCU rankings from the NCAA have dropped. And after 5, I'm not really a big fan. We're not going to go too deep into it, but we are going to discuss some spots after 5 and my issues with that. However, before we get into any of that, I have to start off with a message that nobody really wants to say, but I'll swallow my pride. I'll be man enough to do it. I was wrong. I was wrong about Morgan State. Coming into the year, they are a much better team than I thought they were, and I should have graded them higher. Now, granted, no, screw that. I'm not going to do the granted. I'm not going to do the whole, well, I did say this, because what I did say before the year started is that I think that Morgan State is a potential surprise team candidate. I did. I said that, and I could take some solace in that. However, I also said if I had to pick one surprise team, it would be South Carolina State. I was wrong about that. And I thought that Corey Fields was going to be better than he was. Maybe I was drinking the Corey Fields juice. I was on the hype train, but I should have been on this Morgan State hype train. But it doesn't take me long. It does not take me long to A, admit that I was wrong, and then B, go ahead and hop on the hype train. It ain't too far away. I can catch it because after these first 2 weeks against nationally ranked Richmond, against FBS Akron, the performances that they put up and the fact that they should be 2-0, they should be undefeated. And if it wasn't for one simple play, they would be undefeated. Yes, I can boil this down to one play. And I know you're not supposed to do that. But if the outcome of this play was different, there's no doubt in my mind that you're looking at an undefeated Morgan State right now. Okay? They changed my mind. And I should put them in a, listen, I know that they were going to be a quality team and be competitive and can knock off people. However, this is a team that I should place directly next to. They should be shoulder to shoulder with North Carolina Central and Howard. There's no reason that they should not be a part of the conversation, and not even a part of the conversation, always in the conversation for the class of the MEAC. Not just, sometimes we'll throw Morgan State in there. No, this team has been fantastic. When you look at what they did against week one against nationally ranked Richmond, you go in there, you knock off a nationally ranked opponent in the FCS. Yes, I'm going to continue to say nationally ranked because that's what makes this so impressive. You knocked off a top 20 team. This is a big deal, and you only allowed 10 points in that because his defense is phenomenal. And they showed that in week 2 against FBS Akron. Because I'll tell you what, the defense is not the reason that they lost that game. The defense is the reason they were in that game. The defense forced multiple turnovers. The defense only really allowed 7 points. When you really look at what happened, if you really want to look at how the points are distributed, in this game against Akron totaled out 24 points as a team. One was a fumble 6. That was actually the game winner with 50 seconds left. You had an interception returned for a touchdown. So those are 2 defensive touchdowns that Akron scored. Morgan State's defense didn't allow that. They had no parts of that. So that's 14 points already. You're down to 10. And then the one field goal that they had was a 3-yard drive. So what does that mean? It means they already got the ball in scoring position. Defense couldn't really do much about that. Now, granted, there was some times when they got the ball in scoring position and the defense pushed them out. Ended up in a 4th and 23. I think that was one time in particular, and there was other times where the ball was close and you didn't have to drive much and it ended up in a punt. The defense was locked down. Don't allow the 24 points to fool you, because they didn't allow, even if you want to say 10 points, even if you want to just say, okay, well, they didn't force them out. They allowed a field goal and a touchdown drive. Can't take the touchdown drive away from them. That's fine. You can do that, and I'll allow you to do that. But over these 2 weeks, against a nationally ranked FCS opponent and an FBS opponent, the Morgan State defense has allowed 20 points total. So listen, I was wrong. I was wrong. I don't like doing this, but if I'm going to come in and I'm going to pat my back and I'm going to say, and I'm going to puff out my chest and say, oh, well, North Carolina A&T and North Carolina Central came down to the keys of victory that I clearly articulated on Friday. Yeah, I'm going to praise myself for that. But at the same time, I got to be real and say, you know what? I got this one wrong. I ain't gonna say everyone I get wrong, just like I ain't gonna say everyone that I get right. I talk 5 days a week for 25 to 30 minutes. Trust me, I get a whole bunch right and I get a whole bunch wrong. It happens. Trust me, it happens. And if you think you don't get anything wrong, you don't talk enough. Just being real with you. No person who talks a lot is right all the time. But this one was big. And that Morgan State defense, I'm looking at guys like Elijah Williams. I'm looking at guys like Asante. I don't want to say his first name because I think I'm gonna mess it up. But number 5, no, not intentional. I'm looking at the linebacker core, 40, 54. Those guys impress me. I'm looking at the defensive backfield who got multiple interceptions, including Jordan Toles, who almost had an interception return for a touchdown. Like, this is a situation, and set up a scoring drive, a touchdown drive for Morgan State. They capitalized on that too. This is a remarkable defense. This is a defense that will have you competing for a Celebration Bowl. And just so you don't think I'm being, I'm moving the goalposts and I'm changing how I feel or how I articulate defenses, don't get it twisted. That offense has some quality too, right? They put up 17 points. They put up 21 points. So this is not an Alabama State situation. I do believe that they can put up points. And when I watched what Deuce Taylor was able to do when he entered the game, I thought he looked the best of all 3 of the quarterbacks who played. I don't like 3 quarterbacks playing. I don't. But I did like what I saw from Deuce Taylor. And I watched that whole game start to finish. And I thought that he had the best passing game. I thought that who came in before him? I can't remember who came before him. But because the other guy had a name that I can't remember from Akron, or I remember so strongly from Akron. But I thought the quarterback who came in before Deuce Taylor probably had the best mobility on the night. But overall, Deuce Taylor to me had the best offensive success, and not just because he scored 2 touchdowns. I just thought the offense flowed better with him there. I hated that he threw that interception. That interception was killer. That interception was the thing that really held it back from being a overtime game versus a loss, because you lost. But that fumble 6 is the play that turned everything around. Because had J.J. Davis not fumbled that ball, they're punting it, and there's going to be about 20 seconds left on the board, maybe. I'm telling you what, Akron is not scoring a touchdown because they needed a touchdown. They're not scoring a touchdown on Morgan State in 20 seconds. It's not happening. I can't guarantee anything because I can't see the future, but I can tell you what I don't think is happening, strongly don't think is happening, and that's the fact that if Morgan State would have punted that ball off and Akron had to drive down for a touchdown, I don't think they would have done it in 20 seconds. I don't think they would have done it in a minute, because they rarely were able to do it all game long. This defense is dominant all the way from the front line to the back end. This defense for Morgan State has Celebration Bowl potential written all over it. If the offense can perform like I think they did with Deuce Taylor at the helm, this is scary. Even without that, I'm already to say they're there with North Carolina Central and Howard. But if the offense balances out, and look, I could have made this point without coming and say I was wrong. I could have just said that Morgan State was better than I thought. But I wanted to make a big statement and say, you know what, I was wrong, and I'm going to admit it. So it is what it is. Now we move forward. I'm going to tell you something I think somebody else was wrong about, and that's the NCAA rankings, because I do not like these HBCU rankings once you get past 5. I just don't feel like the criteria is really even, and I'll discuss why as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. And listen, just like a right team, you need all of the right parts, right? Your car is no different. You need all the right parts to make sure that your car is rolling and running efficiently. If you have something that you feel like is wrong with your car, don't go to these places that are going to charge you an arm and a leg. Go to eBay Motors, who is going to get you the right fit, the right price, and you know it's going to fit because you're going to put your car into the garage section. All you have to do is say, I have this 2017 Honda Accord, and they're going to give you all of the parts that fit for there. Right fit guaranteed. And if you don't get the right fit, then you'll get a refund back guaranteed, no questions asked. But nobody really ever has to deal with that. So all you have to do is go to ebaymotors.com/locked-on, or excuse me, just ebaymotors.com, and you'll get the right fit guaranteed by one of their 120 million parts. Once again, all you have to do is go to ebaymotors.com, ebaymotors.com. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every single day. And on Friday, we have our college football kickoff live from 10 to noon Central Time. I don't know when I'm ever going to get that consistently, that it ends at noon, doesn't start at noon. Maybe it's the fact that I'm more of a night guy and less of a morning guy. But anyway, that being said, it'll be from 10 a.m. to noon Central every Friday, and I'll be on to give all of the matchups that you need to watch out for. You'll have kind of my big three, my big two, however many I pick to really ride out on that day. But right now, I think that this week's NCAA HBCU rankings, it's solid 1 through 5. Once you get from 5, I'm not really a fan of it. So the top two are the top two. We're not shocked by that. Central, FAMU. Though there could be an argument that had Morgan State knocked off Akron, they deserve to be number 2. But it didn't happen, so it's okay. But Morgan State's been that good. After after North Carolina Central FAMU, then you have Morgan State, and I like them at 3. One could make the argument that they should have been 3 last week. I was okay with them not being 3 because you had Alabama State, who was already much higher than them in the rankings, and that's typically how these rankings go. If you both get big-time victories, even though Morgan State had the bigger victory, they had the biggest victory of week 1, in my opinion. But if you both get big victories, the team that was already higher 9 times out of 10 is going to stay higher on the rankings, even if you both rise to the top. And this was not the 10th time. So this was one of the 9 in which Alabama State just stayed higher, but then they lost to Miles, and they dropped them significantly, which is one of my bigger issues, by the way. Number 4, you have Jackson State. And I thought this was the most interesting part of the article. And it said that Jackson State is the clear-cut second best team in the SWAC. And why I thought that was interesting is because I've outlined how these first 3 weeks were extremely important for Jackson State. From week 0 to week 2, you had South Carolina State, you had FAMU, and you had Southern. Those are 3 FCS teams. Those are 3 teams that are comparable to you as far as level-wise. No money games, no I'm playing D2 games, nothing that should really skew things. You have a MEAC opponent. You have what has been, I guess you kind of been more so their rival than you've been theirs. But FAMU is the team that was supposed to be the top dog. And you have Southern, which is another good test. And coming out of those 3 weeks, we've come to the conclusion that Jackson State is the second best team. I think we can agree with that. I think that is true. And that's what I want to see out of the first 3 weeks. Where do they land? And that's where they land. Then you have Howard at 5. And Howard just came off of a victory, and they're looking for another win over Hampton this week in the battle of the real HU. So after that, though, North Carolina Central, FAMU, Morgan State, Jackson State, Howard. After that, I don't know. Then you have Tennessee State, who beat UAPB after getting thrashed by Notre Dame. Now, if you like Tennessee State, that's fine. But the win over UAPB isn't making me jump them, skyrocket nearly into the top 5. After them is Alcorn. After them is Prairie View. Okay. Prairie View lost to an FCS team. Alcorn lost to an FCS team. But Prairie View has a win on their schedule. Alcorn doesn't. Alcorn has not played a SWAC game yet. They lost to SFA and who they play week 1? Oh, Southern Miss. They lost to an FBS team, and they got beaten that one bad. So I understand why Tennessee State is above Alcorn. That makes sense to me. But why is Alcorn above Prairie View? Tennessee State really doesn't. I really don't rock with Tennessee State above Prairie View either. Because when you look at it, by their own rankings, Texas Southern is a better team than UAPB. PV beat TSU. And overall, as we go through this past 8, I'm not going to list off teams. It just appears that winning against an FCS opponent is not as valuable as losing to a D2 opponent. Like, we're just talking about how much weight they hold. Obviously, one is positive and one is negative. But how much weight they hold, teams get dropped way down for losing to a D2 team. But when I beat somebody comparable to me, I'm below a team with no victories. Alcorn has not won a game. They haven't. They have not won a game. I understand that they played SFA. I understand that they played Southern Miss. And if you want to say both of those teams are better than Texas Southern, okay, I'll give you that. I understand that. But they still haven't won a game, and Prairie View has. And Texas Southern is a better team than UAPB, in my opinion. I don't know. After that deplorable game that we had on Saturday against Toledo, I don't care if Andrew Body was there or not. That was disgusting. Maybe I can't sit there with such confidence and say that TSU is better than UAPB. I don't know. Maybe it's the way that PV won. I don't know. But if you have a winless team above a team with one win, I just can't get with that. I can't. And you've seen throughout the rest of the list that teams who lost to a D2 team, they were just dropped down and down and down. Meanwhile, teams who have FCS victories, they don't get that same nod. It's like, okay, cool, whatever. But you lost to that D2 team. Oh my gosh. I don't know. They should have a little bit more balanced of reactions, in my opinion. So that's how I view it. I'm not really a fan of these rankings overall. I'll say that. Make sure Alabama State was 12th. They dropped from 3rd to 12th because they lost to Miles. Meanwhile, Prairie View can't be above a team with no victories. I don't know, man. I low-key think I'm just fighting this hard because they beat us. And I want the team that beat us to be better. But, like, at the same time, it's just, I don't think the criteria, I don't think the way that you're maneuvering is really adding up. On one way you treat this team this way, another time you treat this team another way. Not really even to me. But moving forward, we'll look at the CIAA deal with HBCU GO because they just entered a 10-year partnership, something that just under a month ago seemed extremely unlikely, and I didn't think it was going to happen. So let's break down this deal as we continue with Locked On HBCU. We've got a new one. Jase Medical. Now, today's episode is brought to you by Jase Medical as well. But this is one thing that I think is interesting. The Jase case. That case provides 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use. So it's not just one thing. You can get it's kind of like essentially like a first aid pack with all of the right antibiotics. So all it takes to get a Jase case is to fill out a simple online form. And in some cases, jump on a quick call with one of the certified physicians. Like, hey, what's going on? This, that, and the third. Get ongoing care from the physicians on any treatment-related questions. Doctor created, doctor recommended. And listen, the overall thing about this is don't be caught unprepared. Everyone should be empowered and feel empowered to care for themselves. The Jase case allows you to do that. It handles everything from online evaluation all the way to licensed pharmacy medication delivery. All you have to do is go to jasemedical.com, promo code locked on. That's jasemedical.com and use the promo code locked on, and you can get more than $360 in savings. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day, making it all the way to segment 3, and I thank you 2 times for that. Thank you. And this CIAA deal with HBCU GO caught me completely off guard. There's no way I thought Tuesday morning I would see a media rights deal between the CIAA and HBCU GO. Not because, why would they do that? None of that. But just less than a month ago, I was told it was dead in the water. Read an article about how they weren't able to come to conclusion and they weren't, to agreement. The negotiations would continue on a game-by-game basis. So what I expected is to see a couple of HBCU GO games be CIAA games. That's what I expected to see. Because if you're negotiating on game by game, all right, maybe we got one in week 3, get one in week 4, one in week 5, but then, all right, we're done. And I thought that maybe they would go back to the negotiating table at the offseason at some point after that to try to figure out something for 2024. So previously they had a deal set up to have 5 games this year. Now that they have a deal, it's still 5 games this year, and one will be the CIAA championship game. So when you're looking at that, Sounds like things turned around quickly. And one thing that was a problem is the duration of the contract, 10 years. They're still going to be in a 10-year partnership. So that's really what surprised me, is that the thing that was holding everything up was the time frame. The CIAA said we tried to go to 5 years, couldn't come to an agreement. We wanted to work on the things that were best for us. I will be interested to see what the 10 years look like. Maybe it's not a full partnership throughout the full time. Maybe at the beginning it's a part-time partnership where you only have a limited amount of games. And then after 3-4 years, and then you every single week you're having a game. I don't know how this deal will go down. I don't know the details, the specifics of this deal. But I do find it interesting because the biggest issue was the duration. That was a big number. 10-year contract, crazy. So for you to still do that, that was the first thing that caught my mind. The second thing was how they're going to utilize the funds. So over the offseason, they went in and they looked at all 13 members of the CIAA and said, okay, what does your media look like? What is your cameras, the equipment, all of that stuff? What does it look like? Because we want to have you on TV, and we can have you on TV looking bad. So let's evaluate you. I'm sure some made the cut, some were underneath the cut barely, some really weren't close. I'm sure all of those things were true. Now the money that they get from this deal, they're going to go in and they're going to put in to make sure that the games look good, that they have the right equipment on campus, every campus. So overall, good deal, 10 years. I'll be interested to see the details and all of those things. But you're going to get football, you're going to get basketball. I think they're going to have, I think volleyball. But then you're also going to have the Olympic sports. So it's going to be a lot of CIAA on HBCU GO, and that company is really doing a lot of big time things. So overall, good partnership, CIAA, HBCU GO. The HBCU rankings, I wasn't really a fan. I thought that the criteria got mixed and matched, and it wasn't really consistent after you get past the top 5. But the top 5 was somebody that, or it was a group of teams that I thought deserved to be in the 5. Argue amongst yourself how you want to rank them and whatnot, but I like the order. And then also, I was wrong. Not the thing I wanted to end it on. If I would have thought about it, I would have started with that first and then wrapped up with the CIAA the same way I did in the segments. In my recap, I would have done that as well. But you know what? I guess I'll end it off on a better note. And thank you, because I truly do appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. I appreciate that every single day. And on tomorrow's episode, we'll be back with some of our games of the week. We'll be looking towards week 3 now. We've done a lot of recapping for week 2. The last 2 days of the week, we always like to look forward to the upcoming week. So we're not just recapping, we're also previewing. So in the meantime, in between time, if you're looking for me, you can find me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Until the next time that we're here to the family, take care, stay blessed. Peace.